in the Realms of Mediumship by Chico Francisco Candido Xavier and inspired by the Spirit Andre Luis. Chapter 13, Thought and Mediumship. A profound and respectful silence had set in. The group was awaiting the closing message. I felt that the environment was lighter, more pleasant. A brilliant band of light appeared over Donna Selina's head. She became ecstatic, completely disengaged from her physical body and surrounded by bluish radiations. Surprised by this beautiful phenomenon, I gave Aulas a questioning look. He quickly explained, "Our sister Selina is going to transmit the words of a benefactor who, although not present in this space, will communicate with us through teledynamic fluids, connecting him to the medium's mind." "That's possible?" asked Alario discreetly. Aulas responded, "Take radio and television, for instance. A person can hear and see another person in a different city if both of them are perfectly attuned via the same wavelength. Selina is familiar with the sublime forces that envelop her and trustfully surrenders to them, assimilating the mental current that seeks her cooperation. She will communicate the lesson automatically, as occurs in somnambulistic psychophony, because the spirit mentor has found her brain cells and nervous system energy akin to the well-tuned keys of a harmonious piano." The assistant suddenly became quiet, fixing his gaze on the abundant outpouring of sapphirine light that reached every corner of the room. I looked at the participants. The medium's face reflected a mysterious bliss unbeknownst on earth. Her rapture seemed to have spread to everyone present. I wanted to make a few remarks, but the assistant touched me lightly, reminding me to be quiet and respectful. Donna Selina's modified voice then resounded clearly and movingly, more or less in these terms. "Dear friends," began the instructor, who had been following our work from afar, "let us keep the peace that Jesus has bequeathed us, so that we may serve him in peace. With regard to mediumship, let us not overlook our thoughts. The soul lives where the mind is. We will progress at the influx of our own creations, wherever they may be. Gravitation in the mental field is as incisive as it is in the realm of physical experience. By serving the overall progress, the soul moves in the glory of the good. By encasing itself in selfishness, it drags itself around, unbalanced, in the darkness of evil. The divine law is the good of all. To take part in carrying out its wise purposes is to illuminate the mind and to purify life. To impose obstacles on it under the pretext of cherishing pernicious whims is to darken the mind and to congeal the darkness around ourselves. It is necessary to assess the direction of our lives in order to avoid the clouds of disturbance and the pain of remorse. In the realms of the spirit, there is no neutral ground. We evolve with the eternal light according to God's designs, or we stagnate in the darkness according to the undue determination of the self. It is not enough to simply incarnate or discarnate, since everyday forms are made and unmade. What counts is inner renewal with an increased purpose, so that we progress with the right notion of the eternity in which we move throughout time. A conscience that is heavy with evil purposes, covered with remorse, filled with unrestrained ambitions, or darkened with afflictions, cannot help but attract similar forces that chain to it infernal turmoil. Obsession is the sinister union of the mind with the imbalance typical of the darkness. We think, and thus we give life to the object ideated. The visible result of our innermost thoughts reveals our spiritual condition, and those who are in tune with the nature of our inclinations and desires draw near to us through the thoughts we emit. If we linger in the lowest spheres of the human experience, those who are still wandering about it in animality will seek us out, attracted by the character of our inferior impulses, absorbing the mental substances we emit and projecting their own characteristics upon us. To imagine is to create. All creation has life and movement, however brief, laying responsibility on the conscience that manifests it. And since life and activity are tied to the principles of exchange, it is indispensable to analyze what we give in order to assess what we should receive in return. Those who mentalize only anguish and crime, misery and disturbance, what other images can they reflect in the mirror of their own soul but those of disharmony and suffering? Wicked individuals in the presence of saints would not recognize their purity, since feeding on their own emanations, they would see nothing but their own darkness. Those who only look for rocks on the road will certainly find more than just inconsequential little pebbles. Those who linger indefinitely measuring the depths of mud are in danger of drowning in it. The traveler who is fascinated by the briars along the road runs the risk of going mad amongst the thorns of the wild bushes. Let us watch our thoughts, purifying them in the incessant work of the good in order to rid ourselves of the shackles capable of chaining us to dark processes of inferior purposes. It is from the living forge of thought that the wings of the angels and the chains of the condemned emerge. By means of thought, we enslave ourselves to the posts of infernal suffering, at times sentencing ourselves to centuries of wandering on the paths of pain and death. Tormented mediumship is nothing more than the entwining of souls compromised in afflictive trials in the midst of readjustment. To shorten the torment that punishes the expiating incarnate or discarnate conscience in 1,000 different ways, mental renewal is indispensable. It is the only means for the recovery of harmony. As for religion, being satisfied merely with the religious label without making any effort at inner sublimation is as dangerous to the soul as possessing an honorary designation and disdaining its intrinsic responsibility would be to the incarnate person. Titles of faith are not mere words covering our deficiencies and weaknesses. They express duties of spiritual growth that we cannot run from without harming our obligations. In our circles of activity, therefore, it is not sufficient to merely believe and to persuade. No one is truly worthy of being called a spiritist simply for having been healed of a persistent skin disease with the aid of friendly spirits and consequently deciding to accept the intervention of the spirit world in his or her life. Likewise, no one is a medium, in the lofty meaning of the word, solely because he or she is the instrument of communication between visible and invisible beings. To earn the position in the work we are destined to perform according to the higher principles that ennoble our path, we must implement their essence in our lives through the testimony of our conversion to sanctifying love. Thus, it is not enough to simply ponder the grandeur of our higher idealism. We have to materialize its loftiness in our day-to-day lives. Great artists can put the spark of genius in a mere brushstroke, a small block of marble, or the smallest musical piece. Souls that are truly converted to Christ reflect His beauty in the smallest gestures of each hour, whether in the utterance of a few words in secret aid on behalf of their neighbors, or in the silent selflessness that remains unknown to the world. Our thoughts engender our actions, and our actions engender thoughts in others. Let us inspire sympathy and spiritual growth, worthiness and goodness around us, so that we will not lack the precious bread of happiness tomorrow. Being certain of our immortality without improving our immortal spirit is like shining a light in the desert. Meditation between two different planes without moral growth is to stagnate in uselessness. Thought is as important for mediumship as the riverbed is important for the river. Run pure waters over a riverbed of putrid mud, and you will have only the resulting dark current of sludge. Of course, divine messages will descend from heaven to earth, but for that to happen, it is imperative to build suitable channels. Jesus is waiting for the formation of human messengers capable of projecting the marvels of His kingdom into the world. To reach this ideal stage, it is crucial for those who have psychic faculties not to dwell simply in communicating with spirits. They must consecrate their energies to the highest expressions of life, seeking the material to pave their own pathway by educating themselves and selflessly serving their neighbor. Communing with the guides of the earth's spiritual progress through books, we enrich ourselves with knowledge and we increase our mental abilities, and continuously sowing the good produces a harvest of sympathy, without which the silo of life is reduced to a den of desperation and discouragement. It is not enough to see, to hear, or to channel discarnate spirits in order to become a respectable individual. Ignorant or irresponsible brothers and sisters naturally swarm every corner of the earth due to the deficient evolutionary condition of the planet's collectivities. Quite often, without any roots in perversity per se, thousands of discarnate souls practice vampirism on unvigilant incarnates simply to continue enjoying the sensations of the physical realm, sensations they lack the courage to leave behind. Every task, in order to grow, requires workers that are dedicated to their own growth. This is obvious in every realm of nature. There is no fruit on a budding tree. Uncut wood cannot be used effectively in the household. Shifting sands do not ensure a firm foundation. There is no light in a lamp without oil. A car cannot run smoothly where the pickaxe has not yet opened a road. How can we expect divine thought where human thought is set on the lower considerations of life? What messenger of heaven will make the celestial message illuminate our understanding when the mirror of our soul remains darkened by the lowest interests? A star would try in vain to reflect itself in the mire of a bog. Friends, let us be mindful of the good and do it. Everything that exists in nature is an exteriorized idea. The universe is the projection of the divine mind, and the earth, the way you know it in its political and social context, is a product of the human mind. Civilizations and peoples, cultures and experiences comprise forms of thought through which we incessantly evolve toward the higher spheres. So, let us heed the duty of self-improvement. Without understanding and kindness, we will join the wretched offspring of rebelliousness. Without study and observation, we will dwell forever among the unfortunate exponents of ignorance. Love and wisdom are the wings that will launch our definitive flight toward perfect communion with the Heavenly Father. Let us ascend to the higher realms, instilling thoughts of sublimation in those around us. Speech enlightens. Example captivates. Let us conform ourselves to the redemptive gospel. Jesus Christ is the aim of our self-renewal. By regenerating our lives according to His standards, we will restructure the inner lives of those around us. My friends, believe. Pure and active thought is the force that drives us from hatred to love, from pain to joy, from earth to heaven. Let us seek Jesus' consciousness so that our own may portray His perfection and beauty. Let us learn to reflect His glory and love so that the heavenly light may spread over our souls, just as the sun's splendor extends over the entire world. Let us begin our effort of spiritual renewal today, and tomorrow we will have advanced considerably on the great path. My friends, my brothers and sisters, praying that Jesus continues to sustain us all, I leave you with a see you soon. The medium's voice became still. Very moved, we saw that the brilliant outpouring above us had ceased. Raul Silva said a short prayer to close the meeting. We bid Clementino goodbye. Come back any time, he invited us graciously. Yes, we would continue to further our studies. We left happily with Aulus, as if we had sipped the living water of peace from the cup of bliss.